Thank you, Ben. That was a wonderful presentation, and I think it followed on from Nicola's really well by presenting almost a case study of the things that she was talking about. So thank you for your presentation, and I'd like to invite Nicola back to join us on the panel. Ben, you can keep your video on. You're on the panel now. You're not off the hook just yet. So we've got a little bit of time left. So we're going to have a little bit of a discussion, answer some of the questions from our audience members. I might start with the first question that's in our Q&A panel here. And it's for Nicola. And the question's about how we can support farmers to build that resilience and to manage risk when there's so much complexity in the future of farming, such as climate change, but also, labor, which I think is a big theme that we're going to talk about in this symposium, and some of the opportunities as well.
Well, thank you for that. Yeah, I think one of the first things is that at any point in time, and I've been farming nearly 40 years now, but at any point in time, the future was different from the past and the present. So it's no different now, really, although it never feels that way, because the unknown is always going to worry you. What's around the corner, and when you're running a business, I think one of the things that you try to do, and you achieve it. If you're like, if you should be able to achieve it most of the time, is basically to minimize regrets. So whatever you do, whatever decision you make, at some point, someone will say, oh, well, of course, have you done this or have you done that? These are these wisdom in hindsight people who are so frustrating because they never had the balls to do it in the first place, but they'll tell you what you could have done differently. But that's irrelevant, what you could have done differently. The past is gone. But what you're trying to do is build enough knowledge of what's going on in the world around you, bring in the right people to help you understand, and this is about that self-efficacy thing, be really clear about what you don't know and bring people in, because as a teacher for many years, and in other walks of life, the people who don't know they don't know are the most damaging and the most destructive for any business. So really clear about what you don't know, bringing in the assistance, making sure you've got that knowledge, and then you have to actually make a decision. And it might be wrong, and the future might prove that you actually absolutely nailed it, and people will say, gosh, weren't you lucky? Or the future might prove that actually, yeah, you could have made a slightly different decision and it would have turned out differently and better or whatever else. But you're always up against that. So, how do you build that resilience? That's about going back to those key adaptive capacity characteristics that were there right at the end. Have you got all those? Have you got a learning, approach? Is the way you address things really clearly focused on what's outside of the farm as much as what's inside? Are you understanding all the moving parts? So I'll tell you another thing that I think is really important for people who are saying, how can we support farmers? And that is, I think we should listen to them more. And the reason I say that is too often people will approach farmers thinking that they're helping them because they've got the answers. And often the farmers are often the answers are sitting inside the farmer's head. Or if they're not sitting inside their head, they're sitting inside the head of somebody involved in the business, or it might even be in a wider, discussion group or something like that. And it's actually teasing that out and enabling people to take ownership of those decisions and find them, own them, and then make them happen. Because if someone implements a decision that someone else has made, you can be pretty sure it won't land that well. If it's a decision that they've made, they'll make their utmost to make sure it works. And so it's about finding what's within them and remembering that people in business, and farmers are business people, are actually, they see risk as a positive. So if you're approaching them with oh dear, you've got this terrible thing coming and it's all doom and gloom and we're going to try and help protect you, forget it. These guys are saying, there's an issue, how can I capture it? How can I turn this into an opportunity? And you need to help them do that. And we're not well set up for that, generally. Gross generalization.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess, I mean, that's a really big part of the theme of what we're going to be talking about in this symposium, and you touch on that, a really important point there. And that, I guess, from a people perspective, Ben, it'd be great to get your perspective. Obviously, it's a large sort of integrated business, but that concept of sort of intrinsic motivation of your staff. I'm slipping one of my own questions in there. How do you, that importance of sort of understanding the motivations of individuals and what they need, how do you maintain that intrinsic motivation? And I guess it kind of links to Greg's question there about that positive culture. Is that something that you seek out, or is that something that you build up in your employees?
Thanks, Sabrina. Yeah, I think it's a combination of both. It's certainly something that we build up within our team, but it's also something that we seek out. For instance, when you're going through and employing someone, to understand their prior work history, how do references talk about how they played a role as part of the team. So there's a number of components of that in terms of recruitment, which are important. Skills are important, but you need to ensure that those people are a good fit for your culture, because otherwise, pretty quickly, the skills will become irrelevant because they just won't fit in and play a functioning role in the team. I guess the other part of your question there, I think it's just key to managing people. Actually understanding what's important to your people is just core to being able to manage them and be able to deliver, a good experience out of their employment. So that empathy and understanding and really shifting, and I think this is one of the key things in the shift from leadership in agriculture, where a lot of people are action people, doing themselves, and that's a real driver for them in satisfaction, to really being able to shift that to getting satisfaction out of what others do, and enjoying seeing people's development and enjoying seeing people achieve great things. So that, I think, does that answer your question, Sabrina?
Yeah, it does. And I'm just going to pop a follow-on there from one of our audience members. Just around, you mentioned, you have these regional peer groups, and you have a lot of programs in place to kind of share knowledge and share information. What are the actual sort of practices around that? Are there metrics around it? Is there sort of a formal process? And, in order to sort of share that knowledge to prevent, the repeating of mistakes, and how is it all coordinated across the 32 farms that you manage?
Yeah. Okay. So there's a couple of things in that, and I guess just noticing in one of the questions it talks about the importance of avoiding mistakes. It's not necessarily avoiding mistakes. I mean, it's about being able to, I guess, manage those things so that any mistake is used as a positive force across the business, if you like. I mean, one of the key things, things can go wrong sometimes. I mean, that's the reality of life. It's the reality of farming. So the important thing that we have from a cultural point of view in that is, I say to my team all the time, well, yes, things can go wrong, but when you ring me, don't ring me with all the reasons as to why it went wrong. Ring me with all the things that you're going to put in place to be able to manage it so that doesn't happen again. And then that's the important piece in terms of the peer learning and the peer sharing of knowledge and experience, because that enables us to be able to make the mistake once, spread the learning across the business to be able to drive that continuous improvement. Yeah.
Thanks, Ben.
Actually, just Sabrina, so structure-wise, when we look at the peer group piece, so all of our regions basically have on-farm meetings monthly, where they go through, organised sessions and topics, and they'll get people to come in and talk to support that. So they might do calf rearing and calving cows down just before calving, by way of an example. Prior to irrigation season, going through and looking at irrigation. How do we focus on water efficiency? How do we make sure that we're maximising our growth per meg of water? And then quarterly, we coordinate that into a more structured meeting, and typically I'll attend all those, and some of the other senior people in the business will attend those. And we'll also go through those in the context of our performance, financial performance, operational performance. All of our farm managers get their individual farm P&L, and they get every other farm P&L. So we share that financial information right across the whole business with our farm teams. And we see that that's a really important way in terms of how do we actually drive that link between, I guess, the operational activities on farm and how that drives, the financial outcome.
Yeah, so a lot of structure and planning, and that kind of is a bit of a segue into my next question, which goes back to Nicola. You place a lot of, or you mentioned a lot of focus on strategic thinking and planning as core to sort of that resilience. Thinking about different generations of farmers, or at that succession planning, I'd love to sort of get your comments on how you can be successful in succession planning when you're looking at different perspectives of different generations.
Yeah, and I think in many cases, the first thing to do is to determine what the value differences are. And so when we've run the likes of the value survey, which I obviously didn't have time to do this time, but that one where it identifies where, are they more of a red and a blue or a green or a yellow, and where are the differences? And then you put the family group, all of them, onto a spider graph and see where the differences are and talk about them. And for some families, that's the first time they've actually, had that sort of conversation, and it can be quite tricky. But it recognises that nobody's right or wrong, and that you actually do have differences. And actually, difference is fantastic. It's this diversity of thinking bit. So you actually need people with a different view to take a business forward. If you're all the same, you're more likely to do the same, and so you won't challenge so much. So it's welcoming the difference and then saying, so how can we then still come up with a common vision for the future that will deliver to that? So a number of the vision statements, that I've worked with different farmer groups that have very much picked up on the succession issue, identifying that there's a need for growth, there's also a need for income, and the two often fight when it comes to decisions. And then I think, so once you've got the value bit sorted, you can have that conversation. In terms of the perception of risk, that gets tricky because you've got, someone with, let's say 40 years of experience running a business versus someone with 5. And the 40 years, unfortunately, has lots of, war stories in it. And sometimes that can mean they become a bit of a dampener to the one with 5 who can only see, all the things that they'd love to get done. And they're a bit more, there's some urgency there. There's a drive. There's, they've got fire in their belly, which often has disappeared at the other end. Not always, but gross generalisation. And so managing that through can be tricky. And I think the succession, where I've seen it working best, is when people decide, okay, who's going to be making what decisions, and where can we pass the baton to? And so, if, let's say, the younger generation picks up the operational management and they're absolutely tasked with that, they can get in there, make these decisions, make mistakes, to exactly Ben's point, make and learn from them, have those sessions when, okay, what happened? What can we learn from that? How can we do it differently? And then that becomes, it's a safe territory. They're not going to lose the farm in the process. And it's a little bit like, share milking was fantastic in that regard as a way of bringing the next generation through, because you can safely make mistakes without jeopardizing the whole business. So it's recognizing, passing the baton for bits that work, or bits that where they can work, can take responsibility, and then slowly growing that as the confidence grows. But and I think just one last comment around that, in terms of the diversity is often comes from the outlaws as much as the in-laws. And so there's a brilliant book, it was written a long time ago, The Family Farm Business, where they say, the most difficult job description or job on any family farm is actually the daughter-in-law. I mean, it could also be the son-in-law nowadays. I mean, this was written a few years back, because they come in from a different culture, often a different value set, and it's the trickiest path to track. But if successful, they become the matriarch. So it's about how that transition, and that's all about making sure that those values differences are recognized and put to good use in a business. Let everybody shine in their own way. Not easy though. Succession is not.
I mean, this is just fantastic. We're going through this process with my family and my partners. He's actually the outlaw. So it's all been really, really helpful on a personal level for me as well, Nicola.
We've actually fun coming back into our business. So we're the 40 or the 40 plus years of farming and old fogies, and it. So yeah, I'm experiencing it too on the.
Communication is definitely an important factor. I thought we'd change the theme a little bit, just with a question for Ben around sorry, we've moved that on. He's answered it. Never mind. I guess we're just about to finish up, but I was just wanting to get Ben and Nicola your final comments around the resilience into the future. Obviously, Ben, you're with Aurora. It's very rigorous business structure. What do you think are the key factors or messages that you can send to either family businesses or larger businesses? And I guess both of you will have different perspectives on that, in terms of how you approach people as a risk management strategy. Ben, did you want to start off with that?
Okay, thanks, Sabrina. I think one of the real opportunities that we have as an industry is to be able to, attract new people into the industry. So to actually really flip that around and really portray that operational dairy farming can be a really rewarding and great career opportunity. And I think it's a message that we probably as an industry have room for improvement in terms of how we talk about that, how we sell that, how we get into schools, universities, infiltrating that education piece to get in front of school students, get in front of first-year ag students and say, you know what, something you should really consider, which can be a really great career opportunity for you and lead to a really rewarding career, is operational dairying. To get people to think about that. And I think it's something that, as an industry, we're probably not structured enough and don't do that as well as we could. And, I think if we go through and have a look, the key to the industry from a productivity and profitability point of view going forward is how we, attract, develop and retain people in our industry in the future.
That was a great summary statement. Thanks, Ben. Any final thoughts or comments on that from you, Nicola, would be great.
Yeah, I think the thing that really shone for me in Ben's presentation was, the proof of how that business is embracing technology in every sense, whether it was the data management, whether it was, the cow management, whatever else it was. And I think that is often, it can be underestimated in terms of people realizing that that's a key part of farming. And it's actually something that the next generation is sort of just enjoys in a way that may not have been perhaps the case in the past, or because those tools weren't available in the past. But I think it's that championing of the technology. This is not a an industry that is what your grandfather did. This is actually something that we're doing that's mind blowing. We're actually taking technology here, and we're creating a farm of the future that you could only it's just in your imagination at the moment. But it's you can be part of that journey, and then you can bring people into that as though they're then part of creating this new future, which is so exciting. And it's just a great example of that. So yeah, that's neat.
Excellent. Some really inspirational sort of positive notes to finish on, which is really exciting. I think we're looking to a positive future, and it's also a perfect sort of link to what we're going to be talking about tomorrow in our session. We've run out of time, but it's been a wonderful session. I'd really like to thank our speakers, Nicola and Ben, for your time today, for joining us. It's been really, really interesting hearing both these perspectives, and just a perfect link between your presentations. So thank you so much for your time. Just to finish up, I'd like to thank again our sponsors, New South Wales Farmers. We will have a short video to play at the end of this session. And just a reminder, thank you to all the audience members that joined us today. We have another session tomorrow starting at 9 a.m. And we've got our emerging scientists presentations, as well as our session with Deloitte and on the ag industry farming team. So there's a few great speakers tomorrow. We'll see you all at 9 a.m. Thank you for all coming along today.
Hello, and welcome to the 2021 Dairy Research Foundation Symposium. I'm Colin Thompson, and as Chair of the New South Wales Farmers Dairy Committee, it's my pleasure to welcome delegates and to sponsor this important annual dairy event. De-risking dairy is a top priority for New South Wales farmers. We work every day with our farmer members to meet their needs as we build a stronger dairy industry. New South Wales Farmers Dairy Section is undergoing significant changes, building on the feedback that we receive from our farmers to better meet the needs of the industry and to position ourselves at the forefront of dairy issues within New South Wales. The Dairy Committee will soon be rebranding as New South Wales Dairy Farmers. As part of the largest state farming organisation in Australia, we stand as a premier voice for dairy and are working to improve our service delivery to all farmers. We'll be increasing our staff and resources to include a full-time dairy manager dedicated to dairy farmers. The increased capacity is complemented by our strong cross-commodity advocacy on issues such as water, workforce and competition reform. We are dedicated to delivering better outcomes for our farmers, adopting new strategies that will see us out in the regions and on the vanguard of policy on issues that matter most. Keep an eye out for us. We'll be holding industry forums up and down the New South Wales coast in the near future. We'll be in touch about regarding these meetings. Thank you to all attending today, and we look forward to a great session.